All right, YouTube land. Here's what we're doing today. We did our build last week. Remember I mentioned how, I've been out of the game for a little while. It's been 5 or 6 years since I built a computer. Max, please shut up. He's been quiet all morning. The second the camera goes on, he starts whining. So what we're going to do is, I got rid of that cable mess that was here before that had the extra extensions on that I didn't need, and I went and got a nice set of cables here, zip tied them out of the way so it's nice, clear, clean. What we're going to do is, here's where we're going to need to improve. Notice my CPU temps were running pretty high. Now it was throttling and everything was within a safe range, but it was definitely way higher than it should have been. So I did a little research, and apparently this Cooler Master, even with the additional fan, so I got a push and a pull on here right into the exhaust fan. If I go to like Cinebench R23 and run a stress test, within like 8 seconds, it's up to like 99 or 100 degrees Celsius when it should be down in the 70s. Reason being, even though I'm not overclocked, that CPU, it's the i5 13th gen, 14 core. You say, oh, it's an i5, not i7, i9. Yeah, but for gaming, it's like 96% or something the performance of the i9, the top of the line. It's actually a really fast chip for gaming. It's pretty much the gaming chip to get right now for a bang for the buck. Downside is it does run hot. So that chip is putting off, when it's at full load and all the cores are fired up, it's over 180 watts. This cooler is only rated for a max of 150. So it's just not able to dissipate the heat. It's an older design. It's fine on older chips. Apparently just not up to snuff for this. So what we're going to have to do is, we're going to upgrade the cooling. Problem is, to get an air cooler in here that will actually do the job, it's going to, if you think this is big, it's going to be dwarfed by whatever I had to put in here. And a lot of times they hit the RAM chips and stuff, and it just becomes a problem. So we're going to take our first step into water cooling. So the Best Buy up in Gainesville actually carries a bunch of water cooling stuff. So they got some Corsair all-in-one kits that are pre-built. So what we're going to do is, we're going to end up taking out these 3 fans you see in the front, and we're going to replace that with a 320 mil radiator. So this little piece here popped out. It's already really pretty much ready for it. So those fans are going to come out, and then the new radiator and fans are going to mount right there, and then the hoses are going to come over here to the CPU. Now, if you've watched some of the videos where they say, oh, don't do it that way, don't have the CPU with the lines on the top, it's fine. As long as this top up here, as long as the top of the radiator where the hoses come out is higher, even if it's only by an inch, as long as it's higher than where the CPU sits, and where the CPU sits is down here. The center of the CPU is right under there. So that's a good 3 inches below the top. You'll never have to worry about getting air bubbles into the system, into the pump. So it's only when you have, like, if you had a smaller 240 mil and you had it mounted down low here, and so the hoses were going up to the CPU, then yeah, once air gets into the line, eventually this would become the high point, and that's where the bubbles are going to go. As long as the top of this is below, or I'm sorry, above, and the CPU is below, you're not going to get that problem with the bubbles. So you'll have the line going in. The pump isn't strong enough to suck the air that will collect a little tiny bit that'll be at the top of the radiator. It can't suck it all the way down through the fans and back up to the output and back. It just can't. Physics says that will not work. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to try that out. And I watched different videos on the different configurations you can do here. When you put it on the top and you have it exhausting up, it makes the video card run a little cooler because you're drawing cool air in, but the air in the case is warmer. So you're drawing that warm air through the radiator and using it as exhaust. If you're using it on the intake side, you're getting cool outside ambient air-conditioned air through the radiator, which will cool this better, at the expense that it does dump a little more heat into the case, and so your video temps might be a little higher. The tests that I watched, where they went through and tested all the different configurations and placements and all that stuff, found that top-mounted, the CPU rose much higher in temperature from the video card air heating the air before it went through the radiator and reducing its efficiency. That was a bigger delta than the slightly warmer air from a large radiator pulling in and heating up the video card. The video card went up like 2 degrees Celsius. This went up 10. So we're going to do a front mount, bring in the cool air. I've got a higher power exhaust fan here. And then these extra fans here, I may put 2 of them up here and act as exhaust fans. So yeah, we'll be bringing that air in, but it won't stick around as long because we're going to have 3 120 millimeter, one here, and one here. And that'll suck the air out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to reuse 2 of these fans and see if we can make that all work. So what I'm going to do is shower up, head over to Best Buy, grab a Corsair 320 millimeter all-in-one kit. We're going to come back. We're going to take this off. I'm also going to get some better thermal goo, some thermal paste. While I'm there, we're going to remove this. We're going to, actually, maybe those fans look really awesome. I may use those fans on the top. We'll see. It depends on whether you can see it with the glass on. Because the side, yeah, you know what? They might stick down far enough. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But either way, we'll have all RGB lighting and stuff like that. The kit's going to be RGB lighting here. But I think that'll look pretty good. These wires are all cleaned up. Everything's zip tied into place. I need to find a better way to route this so you don't see that here. So I may change out that fan. Yeah, you know what? The best thing to do, because that way they'll all match, is I may take out this fan, which is a Cooler Master. These are all Corsair fans, and there's 3 of them. So I can move one to here, and the cables are much longer, so I can route it around the back instead of having to go this way. I didn't have enough slack to run in and then back out the bottom. So we'll pop out this fan, put this one over here, and then we'll put these 2 as exhaust fans up here. So we'll have 3 exhaust fans pulling heat out the top and the back, and then we'll have our all-in-one liquid-cooled radiator and cooling block here. And that'll get rid of these wires and should get rid of those wires. Like everything should be pretty much hidden other than the hoses. So I think this will be a big improvement on the build and get our cooling where it needs to be. And we will go from there. And then we're going to tidy up the cables on the backside because it does look a little bit like a rat's nest. So we're going to try to reroute and get everything all buttoned up into place. You never see that, but if we're in there anyway, might as well do it right. So anyway, I'm going to shut down, go to Best Buy, and we'll pick this back up in a bit. All right, everybody, we're back from our trip to Best Buy. So here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be removing that. Just, it's inadequate. It's not rated for the amount of heat this processor creates. So we're going to pull that, and we're going to pull those 3 fans. Those are all coming out. What's going in its place is this. We're going to have the Corsair H150i Elite Capellix. I don't know. It's a water block pump all-in-one. It's RGB fans. It's got a 320 millimeter radiator, all pre-filled, ready to go. We're going to go through not a bleed process, but just making sure that there's no air in this. We'll show you the quick process for that. Just make sure that it's impossible to make a system that doesn't have any air in the system at all. So we want to make sure that we let all the bubbles rise up. It's no different than like if you're flushing coolant on a radiator and stuff, right? You got to burp it and get a couple bubbles out and make sure everything's up at the top of the radiator, not down in the system and impeding the cooling. So we're going to do that. We're going to mount this back in. I took out the mesh from the front. There was a, which, helps with dust and stuff like that, but it also impedes cooling a little bit. So I'm going to take this out. We're just going to have the radiator fans up there. I tend to go through and clean the system out. I blow it out with an air compressor every other month and keep everything running right. And you'll be able to tell if you started getting dust and clogging up your fans or your radiator fins, rather. You're going to see your coolants, your temperatures rise. So it's not like one day it's going to be completely choked with dust and you had no warning. It'll be building over the course of months of slowly losing some of its efficiency. So that's what we're going to do. We've got our RAM. We got everything else hooked up, all the wires pulled out of the way. We're going to clean up this stuff here because I'm going to swap out one of those fans for this one, and then I can run the wires up behind to where I need to run it. So we'll clean that up. And then we're going to have the radiator going in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to remove, let's clean up our work area here. Get this out. Oh, also, we're replacing and putting in the radiator there to water cool the CPU. I got this stuff, which is really good thermal paste. So we'll get good thermal conductivity. And then instead of removing and putting those fans up top, we're going to go to 140s. So same brand, but they move more air and they do it quieter because it's a bigger diameter fan. It's 140 millimeter. So the blades are bigger. It can move more air at a lower RPM. So that'll keep things running cooler as well as quieter. And being that I only have 2 fans up top, I figure having 2 of the 140s up here, exhausting the air out because you got the cool air coming in, going through the radiator, and then let's suck it out the top. And then we'll have the exhaust fan over here doing the same. And that'll be bringing cool air in, not just through here, but it'll just help keep the ambient temperature lower in here so that our XT 9700 or RX 9700 XT, whatever this thing is, will keep as cool as possible. So first step, clean off your workspace. What we're going to do is let's lay this down on its side. Let's use this box. Leave it down a little bit. All right, I think that works. Yeah, that should work. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop off both cooling fans to start with. That's going to give us access to the screws. Carefully pull those up. And let's unplug. Wires. All right, let's see. So we got one off. Let's pop this one. Also going to need to run and get a couple paper towels. Let's see, where does this one plug in? This one plugs in. All right, we already unplugged that. So we got these 2 off. Let's get them out of the way to keep our table clean. All right. Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to get a couple paper towels because we need to clean off that CPU stuff. All right. So the RGB 212, it's a good cooler. It's just not up to the task of this particular CPU. The newer, really fast, high core CPUs, you get blistering performance, but they do produce a lot more heat. So go ahead and loosen all those 4 screws. Get that off, clean up the CPU. And we're going to remove the front screws, all these fans in the front. Pull the wiring as well. And then we'll unpackage the new one and see where that leaves us. All right, so there's the old one. Now before you go laying this down and getting goo everywhere, let's go ahead and clean it up. This is like a 10-year-old design. It's good. It's one of the best value coolers for a long period of time, but it's only going to go so far. I looked at some of the other air coolers, the M.2 like DB15 or something like that, but man, they're just freaking massive. And I just don't want that kind of stuff in here. So, all right, we got that. Got the CPU out, or the cooler out, got that cleaned up. Now we're going to remove these front fans. So let's put that there. Jesus Christ. As I get ready to throw my fucking table on the ground. All right, we got the old plate off. That's good. So now let's go find all our wires. So these are all tie wrapped up here. So let's get rid of those. And if we're getting a bit of fisheye lens because we're so close. So if me or the computer looks a little wonky or out of scale, I'm actually not this fat. It's I'm on super wide and I'm like a foot away from the camera. So it's adding a little bit of fisheye to it. So, all right, so we need to pull up all the RGB connectors because these fans are all coming out. All right, let's pop these out. There's that one. I don't know why that one won't pop out. that one. Let's see. Why is that one not popping out? That is somewhat peculiar. Of course, I can never get the right freaking angle. I'll be hitting the camera when I do. Come on, damn it. There we go. Not sure why that was up and locked. Didn't even know they did that. All right. So we got that wire out. We've got this wire out. So those are all the RGB connectors that go to the iQUE hub. So now we got those out. Now we got to go and let's see. These wires are all zip tied together, and these all go down to the bottom of the motherboard. So down in here, we've got that fan, that fan, that fan. Be careful not to unplug your other wires because those are your switches and things like that to turn it on. So let's pull those out. Don't just yank them because the clip on the end will have a habit of catching on something. All right, so we got all 6 wires hanging out the back or out the side. So now we can turn this around and hopefully again without almost knocking it on the floor. Get our Phillips screwdriver. And let's start removing fans. Then we're going to unpack the new cooler, figure out how we need to mount it and all that stuff, and go through the packet. I'm going to save these fans because they're actually good fans. But I can only use 2 in the top. So that's why we're going to. Let's see. I'm sure I zip tied something down here so this doesn't want to come out. Yep. Let's just cut that little cable tie. Careful not to cut any wires in the process. All right, so there's one. Save these, they're good fans, but I'm going with the 140s up top because you can only have 2, so why not have the 2 better ones? Also, they tend to be, they look a little better. They'll take up more of the room instead of having this big wide open space up top with 2 little fans. I think it'll look a little more proportional while cooling better, while being quieter. So that is a win-win-win if you're keeping count. All right, almost done with the second fan. All right, fan number 2 out. Got quite the pile of fans and wires going on over here. Yeah, Max is being quiet now. Well, he got fed, but also he's been a little weird. He's not aggressive as a dog. He's a big baby. He's really good with people, but every once in a while with other dogs, he gets a little bitchy. Let's just say. And so he did it last night where, don't know why, kind of went after Poppy a little bit. Didn't actually bite her, just made a lot of noise and looked, scary. And then so I was watching him today because he does do it when he gets a little food aggressive. So I was watching him when I fed them, and he always ends up dropping a few bits of kibble on the ground, and Poppy will go over and pick him up. So I just sat there waiting, saying, "Go ahead, Poppy, grab him, see what happens." As soon as he lunged at her, pow, popped him right in the head. And you go, "Oh, that's mean. You hate your dog." I'm not beating on him. The dog loves me, but he's not a dangerous dog, but he could be a dangerous dog if you wanted. He's a 75-pound pitty or American bully with a big set of jaws, very muscular. He could do damage. So The one thing he respects is a show of force. That's because that's how he thinks. That's the alpha and pack mentality. So he needs to be reminded every once in a while that he is not at the top of the food chain. And now he's over there and we're cool. You know, he pouts a little bit, then he comes up, he's like, are we good? Are we good? Like, yeah, we're good, buddy. Just don't do that again. And then he nuzzles and he's good and he's quiet. We've reestablished the fact that he is not the alpha. He's the alpha as far as dogs are concerned, but he is not the alpha in the house. I am. So now he's nice and quiet. It's like your kids, sometimes you can keep telling them, don't do that, but they don't listen. Eventually, Dad's got to bring out the belt. And the good news is you don't have to do it often. You only got to do it once or twice. Then they know, oh, when he says stop doing that, that means X, Y, and Z is about to go down. And then it's no longer, you don't have to use any kind of violence. It's the mere threat of, if I do X, I'm going to have a bad afternoon. All right. So here's what we got. We're going to use the Intel 1700 mounting kit. So this plate, this is nice. This will actually be easier to mount than the other, the air cooler I had, which you had to kind of hold in place and all that stuff. What's going to happen here is this is going to go on the back. It's going to kind of stick into place just temporarily, just to hold it there. And then that's for 11.5, 1200, Intel 1700. Those are the screws. Okay, cool. And then you got all these different screws here. There will be, what is this? Ooh, that's the clear acrylic color I got top for the, whatchamacallit, we got a little Torx wrench, so that's good. So this is going to be the backing plate. This is going to mount up to the back. It's got some cushions and standoffs so you won't crush anything. And then, let's see, let's put away what we don't need. TR4 retention, I don't need that. That is our new, if I just use the existing one, if the plugs are the same, let's unpack this and see what we got. Carefully cut so you don't nick any of the wires. So this is a new, this way up. I could take out the old one, although the plugs are all the same. So I think this is just a covered version of that. Being that that one's already in there and mounted, I'm just going to use that. It has the same connector. It's got a USB. Yeah, that one's already kind of wired in. So we're going to use that one. But save this, because if your port ever goes out, you might need that. And then we've got the radiator. Now, be careful handling the radiator. Why? Because I told you to. No, you don't want to bend these vanes. You want to make sure that everything stays nice. Let's unpack that real quick and see what we're looking at. Now, this has thermal paste applied, and apparently I just pulled the cap, the plastic cap that was protecting that. We're going to wipe that off, and we're going to use the goo that I've got. It's better. So carefully clean all that off. Actually, you get it all over the place in the process, or all over your hands, because it will get into your clothing and stuff. Right, so we got that. We got our radiator. The system is actually fairly light. So what is this? I guess this is if you want a different, if you'd rather have it instead of being black with the Corsair logo. I guess if you want it to be white. Oh, I'm fine with black. I'm not going to bother removing that just to change that. All right, so we've got these clips that go under here apparently and pop off if you're not careful. So those are going to go under. So what's going to happen is this is going to go on the back. There's going to be some screws that go in here for the 1700 that are going to screw in to this and hold this on the motherboard. And then there's screws on either end. See that? And so those are going to be sticking out, in which case you're going to tighten it down with, I don't know, somewhere in here should be a set of thumb screws. Watch, I'm going to pick up the one box that doesn't have them. They're missing. Nope, there's another bag down on the bottom. That's why you never throw the box away until you're all done. So there's all sorts of extra screws and stuff in here. So what we're going to need, this is for all of, I guess, a bunch of them. But this one definitely says, so that one's for 1200. This one's for that. Don't need it. This one is for the 1700. So then what we want to do is we want to open this up. And we are going to look at the instructions on this, trust me. And we're going to figure out, okay, because a bunch of these screws are going to be for the radiators, but these are the knobs that you're going to want. These 4 knobs are going to go, and that's what's going to go on top of this. So these double-ended screws, one end goes in the motherboard, those screw heads will be sticking up through there, and then you're going to put these on, and that's what you're going to tighten down and affix that to it. So, all right, let's take the radiator out. See what we're looking at. As far as electrical connections go, this is kind of an all-inclusive thing, so this may free up some ports and stuff on there, so that'll be good. So let's see what we have. We've got this, which is a 3-pin. I don't know where that's going to go. This goes into, I don't know where this is going to go. Let's do something radical. Let's pull out the goddamn instructions. That's safety and warranty. Don't need that. So we need this. So that's showing us how to mount it. Biggest thing here is going to be figuring out the plugs. All right. Yeah, that'll mount like that. Great. That one's kind of self-explanatory. Of course, you can't really mount it up till we get the radiator in, so install the fans and radiator. So we're going to put the radiator. Man, these instructions suck. Included hardware. Now it's in another language, so I think we're going to just figure this out together. So what I believe is going to happen is this is going to be mounted in like this. Let's see. We're going to have this. Let's see. What if we swivel it around? Yeah. This is going to be mounted like this in the case. You hear a little water or air in there? That's where your air bubble is. So what I'm doing here is this will pump out the little bit of air that gets stuck in there, but it won't get stuck because it's not going to be the highest point on the whatchamacallit. So what I'm going to do is shake this out with this up and have that sit higher than that. So that's going to be on the motherboard basically like that. That's how it's going to sit. So that'll be definitely higher. So let's go slip this in and then see how we're going to mount it. So we've got all these long screws. So I'm going to assume 4 per. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 for each. Well, there's actually a lot more screws here than there are whatchamacallits. Then we've got short screws. Those are going to be for what I believe we're going to do is the long screws are going to go through the fan and mount each fan to the radiator. We'll do that. We'll install those first. And then the short screws are going to be going from the front of the case here into, let's just put this over here. Let's see if we can get a little better angle so you can watch. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to end up doing. So first step is going to be getting all of our whatchamacallits mounted properly. So we want to look for the direction that these are going to be flowing in. Now typically it flows, the air is going to flow from this side going against this side. However, do we know that for a fact on these fans? Again, these instructions are shit. So the first thing it talks about installing the backplate. We'll get to that. Intel standoff screws. That's easy. Install the fans and radiator. It is showing that this side of the fan is facing inward. So if you're looking at the picture here, this, hold on a second, can that be right? Normally it pulls, this is the front side of the fan. I may have to go and fire up one of these fans just to see which direction. I guess I can always reverse them, although that's kind of a pain in the ass. All right, tell you what. I'm going to start assembling this. I'm not going to make you watch all this. I'll come back at various points and we'll say, okay, here's what I've done. Here's what I've done, just to speed this up. I don't want this video to be an hour and a half like the last one. So let me go figure this out. We'll be back. All right, folks. So all right, everybody, we're back. So I've got everything mounted up. If you look really closely on one of the sides, it shows you what direction. So I was right. It was the air coming from the side that doesn't have this cover. So the fans are going to spin and push air this way. I'm going to pull it from the front of the case through the radiator and dump it into the case. So what I did was, you got your long screws. Now, other coolers are going to be slightly different, but they're probably going to be somewhat similar. But you got these long screws and you got washers. I counted them up, and there was enough for each corner of the 3 fans. So it's 12 screws altogether. And then there was enough washers to put a washer on top of the screw here, and then one in between the screw. The screw goes through on the bottom, but in between the fan and the whatchamacallit. That is to create just a little bit of a gap. And that way there's really no way for your fan blades to make any kind of contact. They all spin freely. So make sure you test that. Make sure you don't hear anything as they're spinning. No impedance. They slow down on their own. They don't seem to be sticking anywhere, so that's good. I ran them so that all of my wires are on this side, and then I zip tied them to a couple points so that all my wires come out the bottom. So what we're going to do now is snug our wires in here. Pull them all out the bottom. We'll show you where they all go later. But you want to get all 6 wires in this case into back here. There's 3 powers, and then there's 3 RGBs. And then this, we're going to get lined up in here. It's a tight fit, but this is Corsair. This is why I went with this cooler, because I got a Corsair case, want a Corsair cooler, just to make sure everything's compatible. So now I should have just enough screws left over, and I do, to take these smaller flat wide head screws and start putting those in. That's going to affix the radiator to the chassis. So do you need to use all of them? I don't know. I'm going to put in most of them. I don't want any kind of rattling or any kind of vibration. I want to make sure that everything's anchored securely. All right. And you'll notice how it just dropped a little bit. To make sure that this is the highest point, if it lets you slide it up, slide it up. You want the radiator to be high up in the chassis as you can get it. So let's go ahead and put in some more screws. When you tighten these are steel screws. The radiator's aluminum. That also goes for the fan mounting screws on the other side. Those are aluminum. The radiator part is, not the screws. So if something's going to strip, it's going to be the radiator. Don't over tighten this stuff. I will say that again. Do not over tighten these. You want them up snug. There's no torque, it's not like the instructions give you like a torque wrench setting or anything like that. Use your head, but make sure that everything is mounted up snug. It's straight, but make sure that you're not over tightening it. If you do, you will strip out the radiator side. I'd almost rather have aluminum screws, right, and a steel radiator. You wouldn't because of you wouldn't want that weight and stuff. But when it comes to stripping things, it's like the drain plug on a motorcycle. You got a stainless steel drain plug with a magnet and all this other stuff. And what it's screwing into is almost always aluminum. And they tell you put like 15 or 18 or 12, depending on the bike, foot-pounds. Do not do more than that. If you're worried about it coming loose, do what I do and safety wire your drain plugs. Because if you torque it too much and you strip something, you're stripping the threading on the oil pan. You will be having a bad afternoon replacing an oil pan. All right, so tighten that up just enough to hold it. Again, you don't have to torque the shit out of it. It's going to have a ton of screws in here holding this. So we'll go ahead, get these all in, make sure they're all in. I slid it up as far as it would go before it starts hitting things on the inside of the chassis. Now they got all the screws in. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to loosen these and just make sure. Is it really up all the way? See how it moves up and down? It is now in the upmost position. All right, that's tight. Let's tighten the other one so it's even. And now we're going to go around and tighten all of our screws. After this, we're going to install the back plate for the CPU cooler. We're going to get that all in there. Then we're going to mount the water block itself. We're going to get everything mounted hardware-wise where we want, and then we're going to go start plugging all of our stuff in. Now, I am just thinking about this now. I bundled all those wires together for the fan. Didn't notice which one's fan 1, fan 2, fan 3. You might want to label them first. For me, I'm going to have them all the same colors. I'm using the same fan settings on all of them. So for me, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be doing, well, fan 1 this color and another color. I'm just going to put them all at the same color, or just put them on a cycle where they just kind of cycle through, do rainbow or something like that. And if you want to figure out which one's which, you can go into the fan settings and turn one off. I mean, ultimately, once you know which ones they are, it's not like it really matters whether it's plugged into fan 1 or 2 or 3 on the motherboard. It's just you need to know which fan's which. So if you want to change the color of one, or for some reason you wanted this fan to turn faster than that one, you just need to know which fan header that one's plugged into. But on a radiator, you want uniform, consistent cooling. You're going to put them all on auto. You're going to set them up all the same way. So it doesn't matter which one's 2, 4 versus 3 or whatever. That it really is kind of irrelevant. All right, so we've got that. Now this one, we've got the power here. I think this plugs into like a SATA connector. I don't know. It again doesn't tell you a whole lot, which is always my problem with buying things. That's AMD. Don't need it. Everything we don't need, get off the table, so you don't be tempted to grab the wrong stuff. But when I look through here, we got our screws, we got our standoffs, we got washers, you got your fans, you got the commander core. But the commander core is only supplying the voltage for the LEDs. So when you mount this, it doesn't actually tell you installing the pump unit. Okay, align the bracket pump over the standoff screws as shown, attach the thumb screws, tighten until the 4 corners are firmly secured. Okay, we go to the next page. Installing the pump unit continued. That is in another language. It doesn't help me by telling me where that goes. So please continue to page 28 to continue installation. Oh, maybe it does have it. The problem is it's all out of order. So you got different languages, and then it says, okay, skip ahead to 28. I'm hoping 28 is going to tell us where to go for the electrical side of things. Connect fans and pump to commander core. How does the fan... So maybe you know what? Maybe we are going to do, you know what? Let's see. Yeah. This plugs into a SATA connector. That gives us our higher voltage, right? You know, be able to draw more current. We're going to have to take out that other one. So this is coming. This is going to go in the case here and replace that. This does power and everything in one. We're not going to have to hook it up to the individual headers on the motherboard. This is going to go to the CPU, or no, this is USB, so we can talk. The software can talk to this. All right, so that's going to go into a USB port, so I can unplug the other one. All right, so let's get all to this. Let's get the, we'll come back to this in a minute. This way up. So this is where it powers. It's a 2-in-1. This is better than what's on there. What's on there now is the fans all plug into the motherboard, and then the hub in there is just controlling the colors. This does both. We're going to plug this in like the other one is to the SATA connector that's already there waiting for it. And then this goes to the USB port so that we can talk to it with the software. And then this is going to plug in down on the bottom. So all of this is going to be powered by this. And then there's one header here. I guess it doesn't even go. So how does this go and talk to, how does it let it know the motherboard that the CPU? I mean, there is another plug here. So I'm guessing this is going to go onto the motherboard. Unfortunately, I don't think I have a three pin header. We're going to have to figure that part out, but we'll be back. Okay, we got our old hub removed. What I'm going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and install the thermal grease and install the pump onto the CPU. I put the backing plate on. We've got our standoffs right here sticking through so it can't fall off. We're going to put our GUE on. We're going to put this on. Then we're going to use our thumb wheels to screw it down evenly all the way around. Show you what that looks like. So first, let's open up our thermal paste. This is the Corsair XTM50. I don't know, it's $15 for a little tube. I'm hoping it's, you know, decent. Can't imagine it wouldn't be. Corsair tends to make pretty good stuff. All right, so we try opening the box nice and neat. And of course, it doesn't open nice and neat. It just never does. All right. So, you know, I've been watching a bunch of videos on different ways of people doing this. Do you put it on? Do you scrape it with a credit card? Do you use the squeegee, which they give you? Or do you just put a dollop in the middle and let it squish it and it goes everywhere it needs to go? We're going with that. I don't think it makes a huge difference from what I've seen. So what we're going to do is put a blob. Is this stuff coming out? Let's see. Yeah. All right, let's, just in case the stuff on the very end is dry. Sorry for the making the camera go all over the place. Let's just throw a little bit on here. Okay. Try to do this one-handed is a kind of a pain. All right, so we're going to put a line. You don't want to overdo it. But you want to have, you know, a good blob kind of the whole way across. Just do it like that. All right. Put the cap back on, which you can't see because I'm using the same hand. Put that aside. And now, hopefully that angle will get it. Get our thumb screws ready, and then you'll need a screwdriver just to snug them up. So what we're going to do is take our block, make sure you move the plastic, make sure everything's good on the other side, make sure wires, everything's out of the way. And now we're going to carefully put this down. Start putting on our thumb screws. Now, what I'm finding is right now, the hose is fighting me a little bit, the tension. So you want to make sure you got this set up in such a way that the, and the hoses will probably take a new shape after you've kind of moved them down a little bit. I'm hoping I can rotate them down a little bit out of the way because I'm going to need them to not hit the fans up there. But you see how well, maybe you can't see, but it's it's actually moving the cooler around slightly. It's wanting to rotate it. And I don't know that there's a whole lot you can actually do about that. I mean, these hoses are pre-cut. You drop them into your case and it kind of fits how it fits. So we'll get these screws on and we'll get them both about halfway. What you don't want to do is tighten down one screw, then tighten another. You want to put them on like you're putting lug nuts on a car. So you crisscross and, stuff like that. So start tightening them, just get them kind of finger tight. That'll be squishing out your stuff, your thermal goo. And then what I want to do now is that thing had rotated ever so slightly. And so now I'm just going to straighten it and tighten the screws down all the way. You'll feel them bottom out. For those of you that have never bottomed out, you might not be used to that feeling. I do know what it feels like, so when you get to that point, stop. You might think you can go further, but you're not really helping anyone feel any better. It's not a good thing. All right. Go over them, just make sure they're snugged tight. They are. Okay, let's peel off the clear lens there. Looks pretty straight. Let's lift this now up. So, watching the videos on people say, don't put it in like this. Have your radiator, upside down. Well, those hoses wouldn't fit from up there. They wouldn't come. They'd come out, and I wouldn't be able to get them up through there unless I cut a channel out of here. And even then, I'm not 100% sure if they reach. They might. As far as going on the top, this tower does not allow that. So what you can see how low. The concern is you get air trapped in the pump and it can't get out. As long as the pump is not the highest point, which it clearly isn't. I mean, it's down there. The hoses go up. It's going to pump water and then any air into that. And it's going to stay up in here. It's not going to be able to go any further. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to pull these hoses down and just bend them out of the way. I may have to put a zip tie or something to anchor them because I'm going to have fans up there. But this is fine. Your CPO is not the highest point on the circuit. So that's what you have to, when they say, oh, if it goes up. Yeah, if I had let's say it was a 2-fan radiator and I mounted it down the bottom so the hoses were coming out here and going up to the CPU, that would be a problem over time. This will not be. All right, so I've mounted the hub to the other side. So let's put our wires through. The thing is, I got to figure out where this wire goes. Because again, the instructions are kind of vague. I believe it's got to go on the CPU fan because it has to see that the thing is spinning. Otherwise, your BIOS might not boot up. So I'm going to connect it to the CPU fan, and I'm going to see if I can just connect it to the 3 side. And I think it's just got a wire. That is just a sensor so that it says, oh, there's resistance there. The fan is hooked up. So I don't need to be concerned, about that. So let's put that there and pull our extra wires up. Maybe snake it around just to hide it a little bit. And we'll zip tie that or tape it off somewhere in the back later. And then this wire, this is the pump power and stuff. That's got to go to our new hub that we've installed on the back. So let me pull all of that slack up and out. Perfect. Now let's see what we've done back here. So I've got a new hub right here. This hub, now it says this side up, this way up, but I don't know if that means the hub itself or if it's talking about just making sure that for the plug. I can't imagine this makes a difference as far as that's concerned. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to install this white line. I am going by that assumption that is the way that it wants us to connect. is that you want to match those up. And it does pop in. So what we're going to do, if I need to untangle this later, I can, is I took off my external SATA bays, and we're going to mount this to that area where those were sitting. Now, it's not quite sticking, so I may need to get some more double-sided sticky tape. The one piece they sent me might not have been enough. All right. I got a SATA power cable down here. So I'm going to fish this out over on this side. We're going to plug this in, and that is keyed, so can't do it wrong really. And now I'm going to tuck that and pull that. Yeah, that hub's going to have to be, I need some better double-sided sticky tape, which I just bought some for something else. I don't remember where the hell I put it. In any case, not sure why it's not sticking to that, but that's okay. Once we start plugging wires into it, it's not going to want to go anywhere anyway. All right, so from this, we need to bring that down underneath. We're going to stick it out underneath the motherboard for right now, because I do have to plug that into a USB port. That's how the system, the software, the iQUE software is going to be able to talk to this and tell it what to do, control the fans and all that kind of stuff. All right, so separate out your RGB connectors from the 3 fans on the radiator. Separate those out. So I got 1, I got 2, I got 3. They're going to be different lengths because they're different lengths going up and down this. So of course, one of them is too short. So I'm glad we didn't stick this into place, because I may have to just tuck this down under the bottom. So what you want to do is go to your RGB side, which is RGB hub power. So it is these numbered 1, 2, 3. I don't know which ones these are. We're just going to put them in. I can always unplug when I figure them out later. And how you can isolate them later is once this is turned on, like I said, if you're doing this, go ahead and label them as you do it. But what I would suggest is, oh wait, we could probably move this. Let's see, maybe it'll stick right there. All right, and all of our other wires should be long enough, all these fan cables. So let's tuck these unnecessary wires. Well, they're not unnecessary, but unnecessary for what we're doing right now. Let's tuck these back in, and let's go in and install these. I know for the OCD case modder out there, they're probably like, you got to have them labeled. And all right, well, I don't. What do you want me to do? I'm already this far in. All right, let's see. It's like no matter where I put the flashlight, it's never where. All right. Let's see, this one is short, so yeah, we're going to have to just tuck this in and let it hang somewhere. But again, once I've got this up and running, what we can do from there is go into the fan settings in the software and just have it turn one fan blue. See which one turns blue. Go to fan number 1 in the settings, and then it may be the middle fan. Okay, well now you know which fan is blue, and you know the ports because they're numbered, and you can go back later and just move them wherever they need to go. So that's what we're going to do here. Going to go ahead and that's secured. This, God, I could just tuck this anywhere, but I want to bring these wires over to here. Get them in that bundle. Just keep that snug. All right, so we got that. Okay, so that's in. I may have to take this out. and redo it. But for now, I want to go check and make sure that all this crap works. So I need to just cinch this stuff down so I can get the case side on. So this stuff's not sticking out too far. So let's do that. Okay, we got that out of the way. And let's unplug this cord that goes from the pump. Let's move it outside. So let's go. And there we go. Let's do that. Let's pull the slack in from the red cables. Let's pull that there. Okay. And then this can go back in white to white. And then we can just sort of stick that like that for now. All right, so let's go ahead. Oh, I forgot. We still got to put the top fans on. Let's leave that alone for now. So now, the last piece of the cooling upgrade is going to be going over here. And opening up the 140 mils, and we're going to put those up here. And then I'm just going to figure out where I'm going to run them for power. So we'll be back when we go unbox those, and we'll mount our 140s up top, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, I think we're done here. We're going to button this all up and go in and plug it in and make sure everything works. Do a quick setup, set up the lights, and I'm going to go ride my bike. This took longer than I thought. It always seems to. All right, so there's our radiator mounted in the zip front. Let's go ahead and click the glass panel into place. All right, now we've got all of our lights. So let's see what we've done. We've got the new hub here. Let me move this out of the way. I have made a mess. Remove the old hub, the new hub. I'll stick this all into place later. Right now, I'm just going to lay it in there and put the cover on just to hold it there while we go and test and make sure all this shit works. But we've got all three fans, the case, exhaust fan in the back, and the two 140s. All 6 of those are plugged into this hub. That is plugged into a SATA connector. All the RGB leads, all 6, plug into this hub, so I don't have to plug any of that stuff in the motherboard. And then, oh, this is getting heavy. We've got our new power cables here that look a little nicer, a little cleaner. We've got our 3 fans up in there. And if I can find my damn flashlight. Got too much going on here, folks. All right, well, don't know where the flashlight went. In any case, we've got, what's this connector for? I don't know. We'll figure that out. Anyway, we got our pump and cold plate mounted. We've got our cable mounted up. That goes into the hub, which is also plugged into the SATA connector, which gives us our power. We've got 2 140 millimeter RGB Corsair Elite fans. We've got a 120 on the back, all plugged into the hub. So this is basically done. I just need to kind of put these panels on, take it upstairs, plug it in, and hope that smoke doesn't come out. Make sure I got a fire extinguisher handy. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this to line up. And it's bulging a little bit, so I got to make sure these wires are where they need to be. You know, I like the idea of RGB cases and the color and all that cool stuff, but it makes for so much more wires and stuff in the back. It really does make it, you know, it looks nice on the other side, but getting all this shit in here, and you need 3 hands at least to get everything kind of in, pulled up into place. Fuck. Yeah. This is what I don't miss about building computers. Sometimes you get into this stuff and you spend more time building and maintaining and messing around with them than you do using them. So, all right, we've got that on. It's bulging a little bit, which means I got some wire out of place. That's fine. I can just push that in later. Now, let's put our tempered glass side back on. And we're going to go upstairs. We're going to plug this all back in. Boot it up. I know I got to set some settings in the BIOS because I had alarms set to go off if it didn't sense the fans. Well, now it's not going to because they're all connected to the RGB hub. So anyway, let's go power it up and see what happens. All right, here we are. It's running. It's very quiet. Just had to install the Corsair iQUE software. All the fans turned on. It did its thing the way it was supposed to, but none of the colors were on. So I had to turn that on to get the software installed to activate the hub. But we're sitting here now idling at 31C. Now before 33C, 39C. So make this. I guess it doesn't really make it bigger, but all right. Well, in any case, what we used to have before was just sitting here idling. This would be at like 36 to 38. So at idle, it is definitely a few degrees cooler. Let's launch Cinebench CPU multi-core, and this is just going to hammer. So see the CPU load there down the bottom left in green. All right, we've started that. CPU load's going up. Temperature shot up to 70. Now, at only about 8 seconds in, 10 seconds in, it was pinning at 99 to 100 C before with the air cooler. It would get up to that in no time, 10 seconds or less. And it would stay there, and then you'd start seeing throttling. When I was running another program, it would show you the CPU throttling. I hear my fans coming up a little bit. Still pretty quiet. $71, that core is 75, but all these were pinned at 100 before. So, well, we're not, well, are we using any, I don't know if we're doing anything with the video card. I mean, this is the Cinebench thing. I don't know what it's doing. It's hitting all 14 cores. So there's 6 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores. Although this is Windows 11, not Windows 10. I don't know why it's reporting that. But looks like ranking, we're right up there with, there's a Threadripper. Yeah, that's going to be faster. But we are just behind an Intel Xeon, the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 1950X, the Core i9. Like, this i5 is no joke. And everyone's like, oh, you got to get an i9 or not. Yeah, there may be certain things that CPU is better at. But for gaming, and right now it's running this stuff, I mean, that Core i5, which is a $300 or $309 chip, is cranking and beating a lot of these other CPUs, at least in this test. So it's no slouch. It's a 5 gigahertz. It's a 3.5 core, but I think it does shoot up to like 5.1 or something like that. I could probably run another program to see what that hardware info is. But we're holding steady here in the 70s. I know other people say, well, I got a chip with an air cooler. But do you have this chip? Do you have the i5 1390 or 13600, whatever this thing is? What is it? It's the 13600K. So I haven't even overclocked this thing yet. Everything's just default. But we're running at 100. We're pinning all the cores. And yeah, our temperatures are staying right in line with where they should be. Right now, this would be at 100 Celsius and be throttling heavily. And I'd be losing performance. So that's the difference that this liquid cooling is making. Now, if I sat here and ran it for an hour and a half, might it creep up a little bit more? Yeah, maybe. But this is a pretty brutal test. This and Prime 95 torture test. These, they just hit your CPU with as much as it can handle just to see, what the temperatures will get to. But I don't see any other slowdowns here. I mean, I can open up other windows and do stuff, and it's not like the system is getting sluggish. I mean, I do have 64 gigs of RAM, so that's probably helping. But yeah, those temperatures are bouncing around just a little bit as it finishes each task. It runs one thing and starts over. That's why you're seeing it jump up and down a little bit, and you'll see the CPU load go up and down a little bit. But it's dropped my degrees by, average 25 degrees Celsius, which is what, like 40, 50 degrees or whatever the hell it is in real degrees. So there's my rear fan going. I just synchronized everything with Rainbow. You can see up there, I've got those 140s up top exhausting heat. I'm curious if I do that. It doesn't look as nice, but it does let air move. They put these things on and it can move air through it, but it's like 50%. You are definitely pushing less air through it than if you just take those off. So for the sake of cooling, I may just see what it does, like run this for half an hour and see what the temperature gets up to, and then put that cover on and see, because it's pulling in cool air from the front through these big vents in the side around the glass. It's pulling in cool air through the radiator and getting rid of that heat that's coming off the CPU. But that air is then going from cool and it's getting warm. It's blowing into the case, which the GPU will pick up, which is why I have 120 and two 140s pulling hot air, which wants to rise, pulling that air out of the case so that heat doesn't linger in there any longer than it has to. So I think everything's working well so far. Temperatures are staying steady. As I do get heat saturation in the radiator, I do expect the fans to pick up a little bit. I don't think I'm going to get much more in the way of temperatures here, but I do expect the fans to get noisier to keep that heat at bay. The way it works is it monitors the temperatures and then it turns up the fans as needed. So your cooling should stay about the same, but your noise will go up. Or you can put it in silent mode and put up with less, more heat but less quiet. If it's running hot, it's typically because I'm playing a game. If I'm playing a game, it's loud and I don't care. I don't even hear the damn fans. So, but that's our upgrade. New hub, Corsair, 320mm water cooler, installed nice. That hose is not hitting the fan, and I did find out. So if it does, it's almost making contact with that fan. What I may do, actually, while it's sitting here, now that I know that this is high enough above the CPU, it's not a problem, I may take out this panel and loosen the screws and lower the radiator that much, just enough so that there's no way for that shielding to rub on that fan, because right now I got about a millimeter's worth of gap. So I'm going to move this down just a couple millimeters while this is running, just to see, just to give it that extra bit. And I think we will be good to go. So anyway, that was our upgrade to water cooling. I didn't want to go water cooling. So I'm like, it's too complicated. What if it leaks? But they've gotten really good over years. They come with a 3 or 5 year warranty, as long as you don't, install it incorrectly. Typically, they're gonna work real well. And just monitor your temperatures every once in a while. Open the thing up and blow out. Get a can of air and blow out the radiator. Make sure there's no dust bunnies in there. Check it for leaks periodically. If you're not moving things around, it shouldn't really leak too much. You're not putting stress on hoses and cables and moving them around and putting stress on the fittings. So the reviews are these things work pretty damn well. So we'll see how it works over time. But yeah, let's see that temperature. I can hear the fan getting just a little bit louder. But my temperatures are staying steady, man. 75 degrees, 71, 77. They're bouncing around. Each core is individual, depending on the workload it's handling. But we're staying right there in the mid 70s. Whereas I would be pushing 100, 101, and it would be getting throttled. I'd be losing performance. The CPU would be cutting back the megahertz and cutting back the speed to help keep the temperatures in check. And now I'm nowhere near that range. So very, very good. I'm going to make that last minute adjustment, and I'm going to go for a ride. I'll talk to you guys later.